So, welcome back to CyFy for a very special conversation with Neal Mohan, the Chief Product Officer at YouTube. Neal, welcome to CyFy.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here.
Neal, for the past 2.5 days, we've been engaging with many aspects of our digital futures, of the digital society we live in, of the potential for harm, the potential benefits of creating value. And I think creating content is at the heart of all of this. And we are, in a sense, going to burden you by asking you questions that others were unable to respond to. So before I ask you some of these pointed, sharp queries, which in a sense flow from the previous conversations we've had so far, let me ask you about your assessment of the India content story. How is the creative sector looking? Why is it different? What excites you most about what you see here? And of course, the challenges.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's a great way to start. I think I'll just say right up off the top, which is one of the reasons why I'm really excited to join you at this event, is I'm incredibly bullish on the new creative economy in India. It is incredibly vibrant. Just in the number of years where I've been privileged to be a part of YouTube and seeing the growth of the creative economy in India, it has flourished, many orders of magnitude. We have, thousands and thousands of content creators, YouTubers all over the country producing incredible content in all Indian languages that's not just consumed amongst, their specific regions of India or all over India, but frankly, all over the world. And so India is not just, a cultural juggernaut within the country. It is an exporter of culture all over the world. And that's one aspect of content creation in India that I'm extremely excited about. The other, as I said, is that it's a creative economy. It's not just about building a follower base of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of subscribers. It's also about being able to generate an income. And one of the facts that I'm most proud of is that the number of creators earning more than 1 lakh rupees a year in India has grown 60% year on year, and that number continues to grow and continues to flourish. We've seen incredible creativity around formats. We have a new product at YouTube called YouTube Shorts, which is a mobile-focused, short-form video type of product where you create, just from your phones, create videos shorter than sort of the traditional quote-unquote YouTube videos. And we launched that product in India first because of this vibrant ecosystem that I'm describing. And that growth of that product has been up and kind of through the roof. And so I'm incredibly excited by the vibrancy of the ecosystem in the country, and I look forward to its growth for years to come.
I think that's a very interesting point you made. I think the large mobile carrying population in India has, in a sense, encouraged YouTube to put together this new product, the YouTube Shorts, which is a mobile-first product. Let me ask you about the challenges. I think you evaded my question on the challenges part. The minister, Mr. Anurag Thakur, inaugurated this conference this year. We wanted to bring the minister in charge of the creative economy in our first session itself. And he spoke about two aspects. One, that India must become the land of storytellers and must tell the story of India. It has huge content available in the subcontinent, and he in fact used the phrase the content subcontinent. But he also spoke about post-production and the value chains around technology. Now, for us to really be the content subcontinent, to be the storytellers that we certainly have the potential to be, what should we be looking at? What should our ambitions be? What are the negativities we need to cater to immediately?
Well, I think that a lot of it has to do with providing the kind of the underlying infrastructure, if you will, to enable this growth. And so, one of the first things that I would say is that I think that there is still tremendous upside, not just in terms of, creators producing this amazing content, but also in terms of viewers and fans subscribing to watching this content. There's a very large portion of the of Indian citizens are still not fully online digitally. And so I think that is an area where, as Google is invested in, other companies in the technology sphere are investing in we're partnering with Indian companies on the ground to make that happen. And so I think that that is both a challenge and an opportunity, because I think that if we address that accessibility issue throughout the country, throughout the subcontinent, it is only going to further accelerate this creative economy that I'm describing. So that's certainly one kind of challenge that I also see as an opportunity. The other one that I'll call out that I know, I've talked about before, you and I have chatted about before as well, is that with all of this growth, with all of this vibrant kind of ecosystem, there also comes a responsibility as a platform, as a global platform. We have India is one of our largest and fastest growing countries in terms of viewers, in terms of creators. And I think it comes with enormous responsibility on the part of YouTube, on the part of Google. And so making sure that our platform is not a place where there can be the spread of misinformation or other types of, problematic content, while still maintaining, kind of the ethos of YouTube, which is it is an open platform where diverse voices, diverse opinions can flourish. And so that's another constant challenge. It's a top priority of mine. And so as long as we continue to address that, I think that this creative economy will continue to flourish.
So Neal, providing access to folks to create as well as access content, to get to the content is certainly something that this business and this ecosystem seeks. But once you give them that access and you allow them the ability to produce and disseminate content, we have second order challenges. One of them is that how do you, in many ways, prevent the platform from being gamed, or rather the folks on the platform gaming the puppets there, misinformation, challenging some of the democratic processes, influence operations, manipulating perceptions. And we, as I refer to our neighborhood, we live in a tough neighborhood, right? India doesn't necessarily have benign territories around it. So in that sense, how do you respond to clearly some of the harms that might be inflicted if the platforms are not well managed or well governed, on the one hand? And on the other hand, how do you prevent yourself from actually curtailing the economic and the creative spirits that clearly inhabit this part of the world, if you were to focus too much on the security and the negatives?
Yeah, I think you're asking really kind of a very critical question. And as you can imagine, it's probably one of the questions that I certainly think most about on a daily basis, weekly basis. Our responsibility as a platform is my number one priority. It's an area where we have thousands of people all over the world working on this challenge of curtailing misinformation while remaining an open platform. It's an area where we invest very heavily in technology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to build the classification systems to govern this content. And if you'll indulge me, I'll give you the framework that I like to use in terms of thinking about this, which is first and foremost, our mission at YouTube is to give everyone a voice and share the world with them, which means that by definition, YouTube is an open platform, and there is a diversity of opinion, diversity of creativity, an openness of the platform that leads to the magic of YouTube. One of my favorite stories, which I'm sure you're familiar with, is the gold medal winner at the recent Olympics, the javelin thrower. He learned his art, his craft, by watching YouTube videos first and foremost. That would not have happened if it were not for the fact that YouTube is an open platform. And so I can never forget that in terms of a North Star of our platform. But that doesn't mean that anything goes. We've always had community guidelines that protect the open nature of this platform, protecting the ecosystem. And those community guidelines govern what is allowable on our platform, what's not. And the framework that we use is that if there's a violation of our community guidelines, which are transparent content policies around misinformation, hate speech, violent extremism, all of the challenges, child safety, etc., then we endeavor to remove those videos as quickly as possible. But it's not just about content that we remove or stay up. That's a very, very small fraction, of course, of what happens on YouTube. And so while we might remove millions of videos a quarter, it's a tiny fraction of the corpus of videos on our platform. And so we take a 4 R's approach. The first R is this remove pillar that I described, but we also work to raise up authoritative content so that when users are looking for information, looking for news, 2 examples are the 2019 elections in India, national elections, or the COVID pandemic. We raised up authoritative content. We partnered with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to make sure that content about how families could protect themselves from COVID, et cetera, all of that was front and center. We also endeavor to reduce content that might not be quite policy violative, but is borderline in nature or might be spreading misinformation. And so we demote it in our recommendations. And so we also do that. And then the final R after remove, raise, reduce is reward. And that brings it full circle to the very first question that you asked, which is, 99.9% of the creators on our platform are looking to do the right thing. They're looking to build an audience, build a business. And so we want to direct the financial rewards, whether they're generated through advertising or any of our other economic products on our platform, towards those creators that are looking to do the right thing. And so we have a very holistic approach to how we think about content on our platform, curtailing the spread of misinformation, that we call this 4 R's approach. And then the final point that I'll mention is we can't do this without working in close partnership with our government partners. We have a long history as Google of partnering with the Indian government. I gave you some examples around COVID, but that is always going to be a core pillar of how we approach our role as a platform for information in India.
Neal, I thank you for that explanation on your framework for keeping the platform integrity at a very high level. However, you would agree that increasingly the consumers, the citizens, are becoming far more discerning and demanding. Many of them, of course, are now seeking greater accountability from all companies, including the tech platforms and the large actors in most sectors. Now, how do you, in today's world, where while content is global, jurisdictions are local, while stories reach everywhere, cultures are still contained in communities, how do you build a bottoms-up stakeholder engagement strategy? And for the sake of the viewers who are watching this conversation, when we talk to you, how does our information translate into Google policy thereafter? So what is your stakeholder engagement strategy? How does our view change your business model?
I think the question that you asked is another really spot on question. It's this question of balancing the needs of a global platform. As I said, we have a couple billion users all over the world accessing information, connecting with their favorite creators on our platform regularly, with specific regional needs, in-country needs. I mean, what's amazing about India is that, of course, it's a great country, but even within India, there's different regions, different languages, many times different cultural norms that provides the rich fabric of culture on the ground there. And so what I would say is that while we endeavor for our framework that I described and our policies to be broadly global in nature in terms of their principles, they always have to have regional nuance, regional aspects to that. And the way that we do that, or the way that I look to do that, is by engaging on the ground. There is no replacement for working not just with our government partners, but also non-government organizations, think tanks, thought leaders like yourselves, civil society, to create the individual nuances that I believe are required on the ground to make it so that YouTube is not just successful globally, but is a successful contributor to culture on the ground in India, but also regionally throughout India. And so as an example, when I say, we have policies on our platform that prohibit hate speech, well, the way that we apply those policies or the specific circumstances of those policies vary region to region. For example, in the Indian context, you need to take into account things like caste and religion and the like, and all of the history of India into formulating the enforcement of those policies. And so that's an example of where there's a global principle around prohibiting hate speech, but there has to be a regional context to how that applies, and that's the way that we look to strike the balance.
So Neal, let me conclude this by asking you a question that all of us in some ways have been grappling with in all organizations, and this is not just restricted to tech. How did the pandemic change your business model, or what are the lessons from the pandemic, or what are the new developments and ideas that have emerged from this very dark period that most of us have traveled together through? So, how has YouTube changed by the pandemic?
Yeah, I think I think what I'll say is will probably not come as that much of a surprise to you, and I'm sure it's manifest in your organization as well. Which is I think it's profoundly changed YouTube. What we've seen an acceleration in the last 18 months that probably, had it not been for this incredibly dark period in human history, would have taken 10 years. So just to give you some examples, one of the things that I learned is that 85% of respondents in India said that they consumed YouTube more than they had before the pandemic. And I understand that. People were at home. People were looking for ways to connect with, their neighbors, but also people across the country, across the world. And YouTube, of course, became a place for that. One of the things that I saw in terms of our products is that the consumption of live content, live streaming content on YouTube grew dramatically. That was, that makes sense. People were looking for those community sort of what I call sort of water cooler type moments that otherwise couldn't exist, and they found those, virtually on YouTube. That was really great to see. And some of the other trends are just, commerce. Obviously, as you know, e-commerce has grown dramatically. Lots of the kind of journey that people are on when they're looking to buy products and services, a lot of that research happens on YouTube. We saw a lot of growth of that. And so those are some aspects just in terms of how it's changed our business over the last 18 months. Of course, it's changed at Google and YouTube just how we do work, a lot of it by necessity, certainly in the early days of the pandemic, and as that's evolved in terms of the importance of virtual communication, how we connect with our offices all over the world. I'm sure you face that on a daily basis. And so those are some of the examples that we've seen. And so if there is a, very small silver lining out of this very dark period, it is an acceleration in some of those trends, which I hope for the sake of not just the YouTube ecosystem, but for humanity, are things that are positives that continue as the world starts to emerge from this pandemic.
On that positive note, Neal, let me thank you for joining us. Let me also share with you that many of my colleagues and friends learned how to cook courtesy of videos on YouTube. That's
amazing. One of my favorite examples. So did I.
But we look forward to engaging with you on some of the more persistent questions that we will have to respond to, safe spaces, safe platforms, accessible platforms, and creative platforms. And we hope to work with you in the days ahead, with you and your team, Neal. Thank you so much for coming to CyFy. And next year, hopefully we will do this conversation by the fireside.
That would be fantastic. I look forward to seeing you in person. It's great to partner with you, and I look forward to the conversations going forward. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Neal.